Mr. President, the men and women who serve in our nation's armed services shouldn't be impacted by a partial government shutdown. Recently, the House and Senate unanimously passed the Pay Our Military First Act, which was signed into law by the President this past Monday. That bill ensures that active duty military and those who support them stay on the job regardless of the dysfunction here in Washington. Congress was right, Mr. President, and to pass the legislation, and President Obama was right to immediately sign it into law. Today, the House of Representatives is going to pass H.R. 3230, the Pay Our Guard and Reserve Act. This bill provides funding to pay Guard and Reserve troops who are not currently on active duty. And although these men and women currently don't have active duty status, they have regularly scheduled training requirements. They stand ready to serve in overseas conflicts and to respond to domestic disasters when called upon by their country. These men and women proudly serve this country, and they should not be impacted by spending disagreements here in Washington. Today, the Senate has a chance to give these individuals and their families greater certainty by passing H.R. 3230 as soon as it is received from the House. Now, I'm sorry to hear that the majority and the President have already indicated that they're going to oppose this and that the President has threatened to veto this legislation. I can't imagine that we would not do for our Guard and Reserve troops what we've already done for our active duty troops. I think that is a big mistake, Mr. President. So I would ask unanimous consent that when the Senate receives H.R. 3230, making continuing appropriations during a government shutdown to provide pay and allowances to members of the reserve components of the armed forces, that the measure be read 3 times and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered and made and laid upon the table.
I would ask the senator from South Dakota. I know South Dakota has a lot of uniformed military, and the senator has already addressed a piece of legislation that's passed the House and come over here. Is it your impression that the House is trying to address some of the hardships and inconvenience in some cases, hardships in others, that are caused by the government shutdown? And in your experience, are they being reasonable and demonstrating their good faith in trying to break this impasse?
I would say to our distinguished whip, the senator from Texas, and that is exactly correct. The House of Representatives has moved several pieces of legislation, and will this morning, that address some of what we think are the real needs out there in the midst of a very unnecessary government shutdown. Some of those have been mentioned here on the floor this morning. I'd just point out, too, in addition to taking care of our Guard and Reserve troops as we have our active duty troops, is really important. All of us have Guard units and families who are impacted by this, and the House of Representatives has given us an opportunity to do that. The other thing I would mention, I spoke yesterday about President Obama's refusal to open up the World War II Memorial for veterans on their honor flight. He rejected their appeal to visit the memorial that's dedicated to their service, an opportunity to honor their brothers in arms, many of whom died in that great war. And I'm pleased that the veterans, not ones to be defeated, breached the barricades and took their memorial. I've had the opportunity, my father's a World War II Navy fighter pilot, to be able to show him some of these memorials that we have and monuments here in Washington, D.C., particularly that one that was erected in the honor of his generation. But they shouldn't be denied the honor of visiting these monuments to their service. And so, Mr. President, I guess what I would say is, when we're thinking about that generation of Americans, we had Senator McConnell put forward today an opportunity to address the needs of our veterans. We found out that even though the veterans budget is advance funded by a year, there are certain elements of that budget that are going to run out of money, and we want to make sure that those great generations who have served our country, defended our country around the world, have the access to the programs, the benefits that have been assured and promised them. And so I think it's unconscionable, unacceptable, that we not agree to allow those services to continue to be funded. And I'm very disappointed to see our colleagues on the Democrat side resist and object to that motion here this morning, because if any group of people in this country deserves to have the respect and also the promises, honor of the promises that we've made to them. It's those American veterans. And I think if you look at the last shutdown in 1995 and 1996, President Bill Clinton came to the table and supported legislation to protect veterans programs, and I would hope that we could get some cooperation from our colleagues on the other side to do that today, I would say to my colleague from Texas.